And because we're subbing, my name is Mary Jean Christian. And so if you'll bear with us, I saw these slides for the first time Tuesday evening. But I have been on the California Coordinating Body Board for 4 years and have been actively involved in our state conference for all 6 of them. We started with our first one in La Jolla, and that's near San Diego, for those of you that don't know California geography. The next one was held in Monterey, California. Then we were in Long Beach. Then we were in Berkeley. Then we were in Long Beach twice. And now for 2014, we're hoping to be back up north again. So all of you talked about a big state. The only one that I could truly sympathize with was Texas. So the rest of you have very small states, I have to tell you. When it takes 2 days to drive from the southern border to the northern border and you still haven't gone through 10 states like you do on the East Coast, it's a big state. I have no disclosures and no financial affiliations besides who pays my paycheck, which is the University of California. We're going to talk about planning an educational event, and some of the ideas and some of the topics in here have been briefly touched on earlier panel discussions this morning.